we have the experts here from Arla and Nepra Foods to answer any gluten-free questions. And if you have any particular questions on the products that were presented here, which is the high-protein hamburger buns and the keto gluten-free bread, please put it into the Q&A right now, and we will get the experts to answer it.
It has to be labeled as milk protein concentrate on the label.
And I think maybe to further elaborate, it is labeled, as Mads mentioned, as a milk protein concentrate, but it's very different from a regular milk protein concentrate, where you just take the milk and concentrate it into a powder. The one we have is we take selected whey protein and milk protein fractions and combine them, so it's tailor-made to work in this gluten-free system. But it's still labeled as a milk protein or milk protein concentrate.
Depends on the function that you're trying to replace. And I think flaxseed is a great ingredient to use generally. It's got really good omegas, right? It's got fiber, but it does react not so well. It oxidizes very fast over shelf life. But I think overall, it's a good thing to add to your gluten-free formulation. Does anybody else have an opinion on that? Flaxseed.
Really. We don't use it in our recipes. It's nothing we use.
So as far as I know, across the United States, we have no issues using hemp. As we speak, Canada has been using hemp, probably 10 or 15 years prior to us. And so they have a little bit of a head start. Europe is just starting to become more comfortable with it. We have a team actually over in London right now, showing some of our products along with the state of Colorado, featuring hemp. And so we're kind of gauging the interest and the acceptability of using hemp in that country and in Europe as well. So I think it's growing, and I think it's getting more and more accepted. I think it's going to become a globally used product very soon here, just based on the information that we've learned, the functionality, the health benefits, the nutritional values. It's a great product.
I don't have a lot of experience in gluten-free sourdough starters. Maybe you can try to add our BK, yeah?
Yeah, I think it's going to be the similar application with regular sourdough, other than the fact that the longer you ferment your sourdough, it's not going to change the rheological properties as much as the traditional sourdough, because its effect on the gluten strands are different. You can definitely use sourdough starter up to 5% with no rheological effect. If you go above 5% on total formulation, you are going to see a rheological effect, whether it is gluten-free or not gluten-free doughs. So gluten-free sourdoughs are going to give you a wonderful, wonderful flavor and a browning properties with your product. Hope that helps.
will keep the moisture for 1 to 2 days at ambient storage, and longer shelf life, we recommend that it should be frozen down. And of course, it can be heated up, and it's very moist even after heating.
My concern was that would it be too like fixed in the structure, too set and not really digestible and enjoyable and soft. But you mentioned, Mads, that
even after heating, it's fantastic.
Yeah, it's very soft and delicious.
Like a brioche type of bread.
Start with that, because I think definitely this desire for snacks and snacking, it plays in. I think it has become, more part of everyday life, and people are therefore also looking for this healthy snacks, and gluten-free just has this healthy halo around it. So I think that is definitely one reason why this gluten-free is so good at it as it is, and so definitely the healthy snacking option, it plays a role here.
I would like to add to that as well. We all know that the world population is increasing, right? And possibly, wheat production is not going to be sustainable in terms of meeting population demands in certain countries. And this is why gluten-free is so important. And this is why gluten-free technology is important, so that we could offer up, another sustainable carbohydrate protein source from other sources that are not non-wheat based. So moving forward, I encourage every baker out there to think gluten-free as part of their portfolio, because it just gives you a variety to offer your customers. And going into the future, customization is not necessarily customization for, a taste or a certain preference. Customization is going to be based on the accessibility. It's going to be based on sustainability. It's going to be based on allergens. So those are the things that you need to consider as you move forward in your product portfolio, in terms of understanding why gluten-free presence is so important in your bakery. And also, high protein is going to be another big issue coming to the forefront. Everybody is looking for high protein. And unfortunately, for the gluten-free sector, it's a little hard to do, because as all of you know, gluten-free is really based on gums and hydrocolloids and modified carbohydrates. It's really hard to put in the protein there. And this is why I like, what Arla offers today in terms of kicking up the protein for a gluten-free solution.
With you, Dr. Lin. And I also think just the fact that it's not just this dietary necessity anymore, it's picked for, a variety of different regions. So that definitely also boosts the market for it.
And you also mentioned protein enrichment, and that's another area for us where we are very good. We have a huge range of different recipes for high protein, like biscuits or bread or cookies, muffins, and everything.
And then I'd also like to add, there's the whole gluten-free community is also looking for products that they've missed out on, or that they have been missing in the past, that mimic a lot of the products that are out there. And we have actually people that work here that haven't had bread in a very, very long time. And so this is very exciting. Protein for sure, good bread. It's what the market is looking for.
It's a really good comment on the on our chat window, which she says, as a person who is gluten-free,
yes,
it is important to move into gluten-free so that we all can eat it, rather than always having to be the exception, right? We should move into gluten-free baking being the starting point rather than the exception. I love that comment. Thank you so much.
So agave inulin is the fermentable, and that's what we've chosen to feed the yeast in our bread.
Yep, agave inulin works.
As you could see in the video, this product is designed for any kind of product that is gluten-free, like a muffin or bread or cookies and whatever.
It's pretty all-around ingredient. So as I mentioned earlier, that we have combined it based on these different protein fractions. So it just works perfectly in the gluten-free matrix. And in that respect, yes, it can be used in different types of not only yeast raised, but also like regular cake types. Like on the video, we had the cinnamon roll as an example. And I think it's fascinating that essentially the same basis recipe, you can make a cinnamon roll or a hot dog or burger bun. That's awesome.
Especially that cinnamon roll, that's one of my favorites. It's fantastic.
Well,
Really good.
Donna commented that she wants the recipe to make that cinnamon roll. Are you guys going to send it out?
Actually, it's the same recipe as for the gluten-free burger bun. So it's just to produce it as a cinnamon roll.
Got it.
But I think that's also interesting to, because at least personally, I have learned in the past that, and developments have clearly been going on, but normally it's been like this liquid batter you have to put in, and that really limits different formats. And because a cinnamon roll has to be rolled out, and then you are adding the different, say, cream and sugar and those fillings inside it. And that is possible now because you can roll it out and you can make it into this swirl or roll. So it really opens up new formats.
Very good, like recipes for pizza crust as well. Extremely good. And there you can also make like pizza swirls, the same stuff as the cinnamon roll.
You can pretty much use any kind of flour. The only concern is the resiliency of the pizza crust, right? I mean, the more non-functional fibers or carbohydrates that you put into the pizza dough, the faster it will tear. So it really depends on what is the purpose of your flour. And if it's a nutritional purpose, yeah, definitely put it in. But if it's just for varietal, you know, you got to reassess the whole thing and understand if you need to put it in. You know, with any kind of non-protein fiber-based ingredient, you're going to dilute the network more, right? So focus on putting in protein solutions. Focus on putting in modified starch solutions so that you get a really nice and cohesive kind of dough, right? If you're going to use just like a pumpkin seed flour, you know, understand what the pumpkin seed flour look like. So I would usually take a little dish and then just put in water and see how it works as a dough. And if it's crumbly, it doesn't have the extensiveness, I wouldn't use it. But if it's like kind of like, you know, like a chewing gum, it has some kind of rubbery characteristic to it, like most protein-based flours, or, you know, in this case, whey protein or hemp protein, it will give you that kind of rubbery resilience nature that you can use in your gluten-free applications. So for a dirty test, right? Just put water, flour, and work that thing and see if it feels like a wheat dough or it feels like, like a rice starch dough where it totally crumbles, right? If it's the rice starch dough feeling, I mean, don't use it too much. I wouldn't use it more than 1 or 2%.
Obviously, it's a good protein source. It does have a good fiber background to it. It will coagulate in the process of baking a baked product. It acts and has properties of emulsification, and it does extremely well. Most hemp flours have residual oil, which you can subtract from your total oil addition. And we found that out in a variety of things like cakes and muffins, cornbreads, just about anything that you could find off the shelf. It does not lend, depending on the higher protein content, it does not lend a heavy green grassy taste. At least the proteins that we're using here at the facility and that we sell, they're fairly neutral. They add good shelf stability as well. So there's many benefits for using it, and we really like the outcome of the taste of, when we use it in our bakery products as well.
Well, I would like to bring the example of traditional bakeries, right? Like what do we have here in the US? We have large industrialized bakeries, we have wholesale bakeries, and we have retail bakeries, and then we have mom and pop cottage industries, right? I see the same thing happening to gluten-free as well. You are always going to have that niche that the larger guys don't have the availability to do, right? When we talk about larger industrialized bakers, they do a couple of SKUs really, really well, and it's high output lines. So most industrialized bakers are able to give this volume discount to their consumers. But what those high volume line can't provide is customization. Like a high industrial company may be able to just provide gluten-free buns, right? They will not be able to provide cinnamon rolls or muffins or cookies, or all these other food service products as well that the wholesale gluten-free baker can provide. So I feel like there is a ton of room for innovation and creativity, and don't let that scare you off. Marc, you are like the all-time entrepreneur. Share your thoughts.
No, I couldn't agree more. The bigger you are, the more focused you tend to be. I couldn't agree more with your statement there on very specific things. The smaller, more artisan companies are able to pivot and actually make many, many more things and help others. One thing that we do is help others be able to jump into the market. Not only can we do keto bread, we've done keto pasta, we've done keto brownies, keto cookies, keto pizza dough, keto, you name it, we've made them for companies. So in that regard, we've been able to jump into the many different opportunities fairly quickly.
I'm sure Marc and the Mads and Nikolaj would have great hints to offer up on this one.
Yeah, my experience is that in our recipe we use fresh yeast. Dried yeast is not working as well as the fresh yeast in a gluten-free, like our gluten-free recipe. And then increase the level of yeast a little bit, then you get more volume on the finished product. Yeah.
So we had a customer here yesterday working with us, and he's bound and determined to use dry yeast. It can work. It takes a little bit more coaxing and some prehydration and pre-starting, but at the end of the day, they do work. Couldn't agree more. We like fresh yeast also. It definitely works better.
I agree. I mean, I like fresh yeast, but not everybody has the accessibility to fresh yeast, and especially when you're working in a larger scale bakery, it is so hard to really scale that out. So that's why a lot of bakers start with wholesale bakers start with dried yeast. With dried yeast, you have to get the right kind, that doesn't need a bump before you use it. Every company has a different name for it. So with gluten-free, some fermentation need to happen before you get that browning effect, right? That Maillard reaction. And the Maillard reaction only happens when the yeast starts eating and starts producing the byproducts of fermentation. So that's why sometimes when you only give your gluten-free bread 15-30 minutes of fermentation, you're not going to get that browning. You give it longer fermentation, you're going to get it browning. It's not because, of fermentation. It's not because of gas. It's because the yeast is doing its job in breaking down the sugars and breaking down the enzymes are breaking down the proteins. So as we know, some of us may know, if you don't, Maillard reaction is based on a reducing sugar and a protein at the right temperature, then you brown, right? So if you're having problems in gluten-free browning, the easiest way to deal with that is to either increase your yeast or increase fermentation, or of course, increase reducing sugars like, honey or just plain sugar, right? But sometimes you don't want to feed too much sugar to the gluten-free population, okay? So so try to just give it a little more fermentation, and definitely use fermentation as a process, as your friend, to help with the browning, and it gives amazing aroma too. So give that a try.
If I can add something.
Sure.
Yeah, our product is, there's a part of it is lactose, and that also helps with the browning, of course. So actually using our product gives a very good browning effect. So using our BK makes a very good browning at the end.
Nice. Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, we actually have around 7% lactose, or up to 7% in this, we say, blend of the protein. And I also recall when we did some testing and experimentation that it was actually only needed these 30 minutes of proving. So I think at the bakery, that might be a benefit. You don't need to wait a long time to do all that development of the dough. 30 minutes is enough. Yeah. We tried to do it longer, but that was just not with a good result. So actually a bit more yeast and then a short proving time. And it don't taste like of this excess amount of yeast.
Interesting. Okay. Thank you. I like that challenge. Marc, what do you think? Mads, Nikolaj?
Yeah, absolutely, it's possible. We've made some in the past and are continuing to work on that product. We've also made a puff pastry, and it's turned out extremely well.
Don't you have issues with the layers not being resilient enough to hold in the flakiness?
Actually, it's turned out exceptionally well. So if anybody's interested, that could be developed for this purpose. Absolutely.
Great. Mads, you have a comment too?
Same opinion, and as you can see from the video, our dough is quite flexible, and it's easy to roll out, and it's easy to laminate with margarine or butter. So it's not an issue, and you can make some good croissants or Danish pastry or whatever you would like to do.
8501, we just briefly touched about the lactose, so that's up to 7%. But the majority of the ingredient is, of course, protein, which is around 85. It actually indicates in the product name 8501, so it's 85% protein. And then we have maximum 4% fat. So it's relatively low in fat, up to 7% lactose, and then it's protein. And it's a protein that does the work.
So a lot of the industry goes to something like a rowan berry extract, which is sorbic acid. So I hope that, I don't understand the no starch fraction, but the wheat flour, most people in the industry use cultured wheat, which in this situation you can't use cultured wheat, so you can use cultured other things, right? Cultured corn syrup, cultured corn solids,
Right.
and what J&K has in terms of sourmate. So I don't know, does the Arla or the Nepra team, do you have any suggested solutions?
Rice, the cultured rice flour. I think there's a company called Mazzoni that sells that, and we use that quite a bit.
Okay, that's a good one. Yeah.
Cornstarch and some modified cornstarch to extend the shelf life in our recipes.
Okay, and I would like to remind everyone to just take a look at your water activity and understand your water activity and shelf life, and also good sanitation practices, some GMPs is not going to hurt you, and basically don't just rely on preservatives. Best practices in manufacturing, gloves, sanitation, cleaning out your air filters constantly. Don't dry your product out in the open. Those are the kinds of things we usually talk about. And we have a bunch of YouTube videos addressing mold-free bakery goods. So take a look at those videos and really understand, the purpose of preservatives is to give it extra days, right? Like from 14 to maybe 20, but it's not going to stop molding. And the best effective way of stopping mold on your product is really to have good sanitation practices. So I just wanted to, give that a shout out and remind all bakers out there, nothing is better than being clean.
So we would go in as a hemp protein or a hemp flour. As far as the egg replacements go, and if we're using the hemp flour, it would just go in as hemp. So it's a pretty simplified ingredient declaration.
We don't only do protein enrichment and gluten-free stuff, we're also very, very good at doing egg replacement. We can replace 50% of eggs in cake recipes without any changes at all. Even you get an even better cake with using our proteins, and you get a cost saving as well.
Nice. Thanks for letting us know that, Mads. We have a lot of resources on BAKERpedia, especially our Baker paper that addresses gluten-free baking. Take a look at those first. And there are actually a lot of gluten-free bakers in our baking industry professional page on Facebook. If you have any kind of questions, ask it on there. I mean, nothing's better than peer-to-peer mentoring, peer-to-peer help. And we probably post over like 20 to 30 posts a day in that active community. So you are going to find someone from your region to help you with the sourcing ingredients, I would definitely start with BAKERpedia, Baker Papers. Go to the BIP forum and seek help there. And also, you know, just read gluten-free pages on BAKERpedia. That's the way I would push you to.
We have done it without any E-numbers or additives like gums and so on. It's purely starches and sugar and proteins, yeast, fat.
So clean, short.
Yeah, clean and short
I
recipe.
think that is
Lean and clean.
Yeah.
yes.
And then also in our flour, there's an omega balance of the 3, 6, and 9, and so that's another declaration that can be with the hemp products that we sell. Really depends on the product, I would think. You know, everything varies just a bit. We actually use quite a bit of it. It's really helped with moisture level, for shelf life, and also for controlling how high or how low the product will expand. We've actually used it in a lot in bread, especially in rolls, things like that.
I agree. I see psyllium husks used in a lot of the formulations for gluten-free as well.
We haven't used it in our recipe. We don't see the need for using it.
That's a really good question. As far as Nepra is concerned, we look at all the new technology, we sift through it, look at the benefits, obviously the upside, the downside, how it's going to help in our end product, how it's going to help nutritionally, what the good, bad, and otherwise is, and then determine whether that's something we want to proceed with.
Yeah, I agree. And I think here in Arla, what we do is that we pay a lot of attention, of course, to the market, how it's developing, but also the consumers, what are their preference, and then we try to map what do we think will stick around and what will we focus on in that area. But I think we have like a very broad spectrum of different things that we focus on.
And I think we also combine that looking into market launches.
Yes.
So how many new product launches are there with specific claims, and combine it also with global trends and tendencies in general, because of course something might just be a short thing and then it's fading out again. But if we hear it like year after year, then it's clearly like gluten-free, there's something about it. And we just see also, as illustrated in the video, that the trend is just going upwards. There are becoming more and more launches within this category. So we just monitor and track additional trends.
Before I go, I really do want to address this particular comment because it concerns me. You stated that gluten-free is perceived as clean products, but both products showed a lot of chemical sounding ingredients. How is this clean? So let's talk about the elephant in the room on this one, won't we, Marc? Okay, so firstly, if you know me enough, I only develop with FDA approved ingredients, and everything that is showcased on here is FDA approved. And in terms of chemical sounding names, it depends on who you talk to and who is the customer, right? So if you go to, say, a really clean customer, say like Whole Foods, all right, both the products here today being offered are approved on the Whole Foods ingredient list, right? So, well, I am saying this as a bird's eye view. I don't know. Marc, your particular ingredients, is it approved on Whole Foods list?
Some of them, yes, some of them, no. And depending on the customer is basically how you would basically finish your recipe or your development.
Right. So depending on the customer that you are developing on, there are different levels of what you perceive as clean. Yep. Mainly because clean is not a FDA regulated term. And I feel that when you say chemical sounding ingredients, I think you need to read up more on that ingredient. And BAKERpedia lists all the ingredients and how it's obtained and how it's being processed, so that you could really learn on whether these chemical sounding ingredients are safe to consume. So most of them are. Anything that's published on BAKERpedia is all FDA approved, but learn a little bit more. That's what I'm recommending you to do. Just learn a little bit more about these ingredients and their functions. Mads, I see you had a comment on that.
Yeah, and I think also, so we didn't share like the actual recipe on the video, but it was illustrated on the table what we used, and it is like everyday common ingredients: sugar, salt, yeast. Then you could say, is that an everyday common ingredient? But then we use the corn starch or maize starch, and then our Nutrilak, which is also it's a functional milk protein. So
it's non-GMO, and it's
yeah. So we don't add any chemicals.
No.
But that's what I mean. It's a clean label, and at least in Europe, it's divided. Is this categorized as an E number? And none of these are E numbers, so they are, you would say, clean ingredients.
That's a good comment, Nikolaj, because we don't use E numbers here in the US, and E numbers are a little differently regulated over at the EU.
Yeah.
Well, thank you. Let's wrap this up, and I appreciate everyone for coming. It was a really, really good session. We got a lot answered. Again, if you need supporting consultation, reach out to us. If you need the samples, we put the web address all on the chat. And if you need a recording of this episode, it's going to be available to you next week. Join our mailing list so that you get an alert. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Arla, and thank you, Nepra, for coming on.
Thank you.
Have a great day.
Thank you.
Thank you.